Morning everybody, welcome to the Lab 207 webcast. My name is Mr. Kite and I will be your host for the day. I guess it may not be morning for you, but it's morning for me. So we continue on in our series about energy with the topic of redox reactions. This video is good for biology and chemistry both, so if you got some friends who are in chemistry right now, you might want to pass this along. As always, we're going to start out with our objectives for the day. There are 4 of them, and here they are. First thing, differentiate between aerobic and anaerobic respiration. That should be a quick review from your basic biology class. Relate catabolic processes to the burning of food and the burning of gasoline. Explain the concept of a redox reaction. And explain the role of NAD+. Now we got a bunch of varied topics today, but hopefully they will flow together and help each other to make sense. Our first topic for the day is going to be catabolic pathways. Now if you remember from a past video, catabolic pathways is a pathway that breaks down a molecule. You are going from a bigger molecule to a smaller molecule, and in the process of doing so, you are releasing energy. In the body, or in the living world, we will say, all metabolic processes can be broken into one of 2 categories. You either have aerobic pathways or anaerobic pathways, and both of those are tied to that word respiration, which in a past video we just said respiration is talking about the chemical reactions that happen in the body. So if you are the type of organism that uses oxygen, you are going to carry out aerobic respiration. Aero kind of sounds like air, so you can remember that as being respiration in the presence of oxygen. That oxygen is key to this catabolic pathway happening, so if it needs oxygen, it's aerobic. Anaerobic respiration is a respiration that's carried out without oxygen around, and we'll talk about the differences between those 2 in more detail later on in our video series. Next thing to note is that for our discussions of the body in the living world, energy released in a catabolic pathway is generally used to make ATP. You can think of ATP as being like the battery or the energy storage of the cell. So all the energy that's released when organic molecules are burnt is stored in that ATP for use later on. And while we're speaking of burning organic molecules, let's talk about glucose. Now, note that your body can burn proteins, it can burn fats, but its preferred fuel is glucose. So it's the one that we're going to talk about most in this class. Burning 1 mole of glucose gives us 686 calories of energy. Now note that that is a negative. That goes back to our delta G thing. This is a reaction that has a negative delta G. It gives up 686 calories of useful energy. Our first and kind of major topic that we're going to track with for the rest of our discussion today is that of a redox reaction. Now, I've got a note down there that says that redox reactions trade electrons and release energy. Before I get into more detail about these reactions, just note that in a redox reaction, one atom or one molecule is giving up electrons, the other one is receiving electrons. And every time an electron is stripped off of a molecule, energy is released, and that energy could be light, it could be heat, it could be some sort of chemical or mechanical energy that helps the body to do work. Just know that when an electron is pulled off, energy is given up. Now let's look at a little more detailed picture that might help you to understand this concept of redox reactions. In every redox reaction, we have got one molecule that is going to give up an electron and one molecule that is going to receive an electron. Now, that concept is not tough. Here's the part that is generally tough to, kind of get your head around. The molecule that picks up the electron is actually known as the reduced molecule. Okay, know that if it gets an electron, sorry for the janky line there, if it gets an electron, it has been reduced. The reason that it has been reduced is because its overall charge goes down. Remember, electrons carry a negative charge. So when we're talking about something being reduced, we're talking about its charge going down. The molecule that has given up its electron, right here, has been oxidized. Okay, so know that the thing that got its electron stripped off has been oxidized. So if you gain an electron, you have been reduced. If you lose an electron, you have been oxidized. If you can keep that much straight, you'll be pretty good for redox reactions. Organic molecules release energy when they are oxidized. Now, there are a lot of organic molecules that will burn. Like I said, for our body, we're going to be talking about glucose, but in general, if you are a hydrocarbon, so remember, a hydrocarbon is a molecule that's got carbon and hydrogen, maybe some oxygen on it. If you're a carbohydrate or a hydrocarbon, sorry, that was tough. If you are a hydrocarbon, you burn very well. Now, your burning is generally known as oxidation. That carbohydrate is being oxidized into carbon dioxide and water, and in the process, it's giving up energy. So your carbohydrate is the thing that is generally losing the electrons, and in the process of losing those electrons, you get heat and light like we see in that picture there on the side. When you oxidize an organic molecule, you have to do so slowly, and this is the difference between burning gasoline in your car and carbohydrates in your body. Chemically, gasoline and glucose, they're fairly similar. They're both hydrocarbons, but there is a difference in the way that they are handled. In a car, you essentially have this. Let's say here's the starting energy of your reaction, here's the ending energy of your reaction. We make this drop all in one step, and boom, we get the explosion that makes your car run. In our body, you start here and you finish there. So it could be the exact same drop in energy that you have when you burn gasoline, but it's done in small steps, and each one of these small steps releases just a little bit of energy. So the overall energy change is the same between the two, but the way that you get there is different. If you release it all at once, just one big step, one big drop down, you have an explosion. If you do it stepwise, you get little bits of energy, and these little bits of energy are infinitely more usable to your body than this big explosion. Your body couldn't use this explosion to do work, but your body can pull these little bits of energy and use it to do what the body needs to do. NAD plus is our second to last topic for the day, and NAD plus is one of the things that helps our body to drop that energy in steps, if you will, or to oxidize an organic molecule in steps so that we get useful energy. NAD plus we are going to call a energy shuttle, and here's how it acts as an energy shuttle. In a couple videos, we're going to talk about glycolysis and Krebs and the electron transport chain. That is essentially the process your body uses to burn glucose to make ATP. In that process, in glycolysis and the Krebs cycle, electrons are stripped off of glucose, so that means that our glucose has been oxidized, and this NAD plus, in the process of those electrons being stripped, he picks up those electrons, and he also picks up a hydrogen, so he goes from being NAD plus to NADH. He is now carrying an extra electron, kind of like a taxi. So right here, the taxi is empty. In the process of glycolysis, he is going to pick up an electron that has been stripped off of our glucose, and he is going to carry that electron down the chain where it is going to be used to produce ATP, and we'll talk about that process in a later video. Just know for now that in the process of oxidizing glucose to get useful energy, electrons are stripped off of glucose, and those electrons are put onto NAD+, making NADH. That NADH travels down to the electron transport chain where it can dump those electrons off to produce useful energy. To finish up today, let's talk about that electron transport chain. Now, we're going to do a whole video on this and how it works later on. So right now, all I want you to remember is this. The electron transport chain is the mechanism that is used to release energy in steps. It's the reason that we don't explode. So the electron transport chain is the reason that when we have glucose oxidized in our body, we have this sort of situation going on where you get a little bit of energy released at each step rather than a big ol' explosion all at once, just like gasoline. So, like I said, we'll talk about the electron transport chain in more detail later on. For now, just know that it is responsible for the slow release of useful energy rather than a big ol' explosive release in energy. Hey, looks like a star. Anyway, that's about all I got to say for today. I hope that this little tutorial on redox reactions was helpful. To recap, remember that in a redox reaction, one atom or one molecule gives up electrons, the other one gains electrons. The one that gets electrons has been reduced. The one that loses electrons has been oxidized. With that, I am finished. Have a good day.